and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's been a motion to approve this afternoon's agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Commissioner Danny made the motion to approve the agenda. Commissioner Guy made the second. Any discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Motion carries, no opposition. Under new business, fiscal year 2026-2027 budget.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, and the public. We had discussed, and you all scheduled this workshop to discuss the budget that was presented to you at the last meeting as a proposed budget. As mentioned, that is a proposed budget. It's a work in progress. The documentation that you were provided on the 28th does not reflect or has not had any changes, even though we've talked about some changes. And part of that is because of some unforeseen circumstances that occurred in the office. Our financial administrator is not able to be with us today. And so I have information, and we discussed this remotely, that I'm providing documentation, and I want to make this very clear. What I have on the screen is for demonstrative purposes today only. It has not been finalized. It is a draft, and it's not subject to being published. That's why you weren't provided that. At the last meeting, we had hoped that you would have a document. So what you have in your red folders or on your computer is contained in the draft budget guide. And I have both documents with me. The proposed budget, which is in the red folder that was submitted, is basically the details that you have seen in past years. The budget guide, if you recall, that Clint got up and presented to you all or discussed with you all at the end of the budget presentation on the 28th, that is some of the documentation that I have on the screen. The reason why I want to make it available for your eyes today is that there is some information that may be helpful related to if you have questions related to various budget departments on maybe what changes occurred and why we have some of the recommendations that we had. And as you know, in the red document or the red folder, you have the document that reflects last year's approved budget numbers, the requested amounts, and then what was being proposed. And as I mentioned to you all at the last meeting, the budget does not include any cost of living increases or bonuses for county employees as a whole. We did receive requests from constitutional officers, and so some of the department, but when I call department, budget departments, specifically with the constitutional officers, they may reflect some increases because those were recommended and directed by the constitutional officer. Also, we have not yet received our insurance proposal. We are scheduled for a meeting with our new broker Monday, and I hope that we'll get an idea of what we're looking at as far as numbers. But again, what we have included in the proposed budget is a 15% increase from last year's premium, which was $1,835,153. So the increase that we have in our red book reflects a $2,110,153, which is prorated among the various departments. If our premium renewal comes in at more than 15%, then you're going to be looking at, we're going to have to reflect that depending on what you all want to do with that. We have met and talked about if you guys wanted to add in raises, providing you some numbers if there are some requests that were made. I know that we have representatives from the fire department today, but as mentioned previously, they have requested some funding for 2 additional full-time spots. We did not include that in the Red Book proposal, and I have some information about that, and they are here and available to make information available to y'all as well. I know that David Nyhart is here from the Joint Board of Elections and Registration. By agreement, we talked about reducing the allocations for poll workers based on actual numbers over the last couple of years. But he's here to answer any questions, understanding that if those elections and runoff elections take place and exceed those numbers, we're going to have to allocate that. We also included a reduction in our contingency fund from $100,000 to $50,000. And the intent, as I mentioned at the last meeting, was try to maintain the cost of services as stable as we could from last year. And we're basing this proposed budget on keeping the millage rate the same at 8.94, not anticipating a rollback, but keeping it level. So it would not be an increase in the millage rate. It would be maintaining the level. That's what these numbers reflect. If you choose to go with a rollback, that may require some additional cuts or modifications or considerations. So I just want to kind of give that as an overview. I can go through the information. What I would really like to do is to field your questions and areas of concern, try to provide information that may be available today, and if we can't address it today, then I would be prepared to have that to you prior to the next meeting on Wednesday, where we have our first reading and a public hearing. And as you know from past experience, we can make changes to the proposed budget all the way up to the last time you approve it, which right now is scheduled for June 10th. So I'm going to be at your direction on how you want to proceed with today's workshop.
What is the tentative tax digest for this year? What percentage is it increasing?
Was from a
And I asked that because you just talked about the rollback rate. So without the tax digest, how do we know yet how to even?
We're basing it on information that we had. I think that I had sent out some information to you all yesterday about the different percentage increases for, say, commercial versus the residential. I think the residential was looking at a 6.23% increase. I think there was a significant increase in the commercial percentages, but until that digest is finalized and it's due by July 1, we're giving you, it's based on educated estimates.
So we'll get that digest on June 1st or July 1st.
They send out notices of property assessments by in May, and so they have their 45 days to be able to file their appeals. And as long as they're in a certain percentage, I believe it's less than 8%, they can submit the proposed digest. Otherwise, they have to resolve those appeals to below that threshold.
I know we don't have raises baked in, but what is a 3% across the board raise? What does that look like from a budgetary standpoint?
Looking at some of the salary, so if you look at a 1.2 or so approximate income, and you do a 3% address on that, that might be the number. What I'd hope to have to you today was options for 1%, 2%, and a possible 3%. And we weren't able to give you those exact numbers because of the unforeseen circumstances. But I can get that to you.
No, that's fine. What's our strategy in previous years around employee raises? Has it been we've always given raises, or it just depends on the year?
Depends on the year. It provides a discretion. Sometimes you have tried to follow what the state had done as far as giving the cost of living increases. This year they didn't do any, except for they provided some bonuses 2 years ago, they gave a 4%, and I believe what the county tried to do was to implement the cost of living increases as over a phased-in 2-year, because that 4% was for a 2-year period. There have been times when there has not been increases, but I know that the county has always wanted to try to give an increase when possible. One of the dilemmas is getting into the budget oversight process is that there are many jurisdictions that do not follow a cost of living increase because people get an expectation that they're going to get a raise every year. Because regardless of the terminology, you're increasing a salary from one point to another point, so it technically is a raise. And there are some jurisdictions. Now, we have been talking over the last 2 years about waiting for the final compensation study to see where we are. Preliminary numbers look like there may be some changes around 5 to 6% in income based on a survey of surrounding areas that University of Georgia has compared. But we are asking for, and we're going to be recommending when that comes in, a salary range rather than a step up classification process. So we're going to have a classification and a grade, and then there will be a range of salaries within that that still gives the Board of Commissioners some discretion based on budgetary constraints.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see those. I know you can plan this out. I'd love to see the numbers on raises. I know, all you guys have experienced going to the gas station lately. It's outrageous at the moment.
So can we give me a parameter of what I had asked for was looking at a 1, a 2, and a 3. You guys good with that?
In the past, we've done, the average has been 2.5%. And it been,
There have been 2.5, and part of the reason for the 2.5 was to meet what we did the year before based on the state's 4%, and I believe the 2.5 was making up for some of the difference when it was the 1.5.
The numbers are going to be the same though, 1, 2, and 3, right? Just give us what the number is for 1% raise, and I will just multiply that by either 2 or 3 to keep going up.
Yeah, I mean, we can give you the
Yeah,
chart.
so just, I mean, just 1% is fine. And then we can say if we want to do anything else, that's easy math. What is our number of employees right now, Rob? And what does the budget say? I know that different departments have estimated different things for next year, but what is the head count doing from a budgetary standpoint next year?
Well, we have a total for each department on the employees. If you want me to go through that to provide you with the total number, that includes all the
I
constitutional.
just kind of look at a high level and say we've got 160 employees this year. We're budgeting for 180 employees next year.
We're probably looking at 180 because of at least when we see the constitutional officers that have requested additional employees. So we were approximately between 170 and 80 coming into the budget process.
And how much input do we have on their hiring? I'm always a little confused with the process with the constitutional officers and their budget. So if we agree or disagree, do they get leeway in their budget, or?
We have a meeting with all the departments, and when it comes down to the constitutional officers, the policy is that if they can establish a need for the request and justify the need, then we are under law. The Board of Commissioners are to fund that office. Do we have discussions? Yes. So we've had some requests from constitutional officers this year that says, hey, we want this. I went back and looked at notes from last year and say, hey, we talked about this over the next 2 or 3 years. And they said, okay, we're good with that. So it's subject to negotiation, but ultimately it comes down if they can establish that they can prove their need, justify the request, then we have to give it to them. As far as their employees, none of the constitutional officer employees have fallen under the county policies. So they have oversight over their all part of that employees. Now, here's the dilemma. And I say the dilemma, I'm not saying it's a problem. What I'm saying is that the county administrates payroll benefits on behalf of the constitutional officers' employees. They don't administrate their own payroll and their personnel. So when we have a mixing, and that decision was made several years ago on the Board of Commissioners to help be more efficient and have a cost savings, so we didn't have each constitutional officer having to administrate their own payrolls and try to coordinate that cooperation with our benefits. So when we get a notice, let's just say for a Department of Labor claim, it's going to say Pike County. It's not going to say Pike County Probate Court or whatever that employee may be that's subject to a Department of Labor question. But I have the numbers for employees if you want me to give you the actuals. They're in this materials that we're putting together for you. And I'm writing down a number of employees for you.
Yeah, I just like to see how many we're leaving the year with and how many we think we'll be leaving next year.
Part of that is because we separate the employee plan for each of the budget departments. So we gave you some information related to, or giving you some information related to the general fund revenues and the various sources of revenues, giving you the details related to that chart. But these are related to revenues. Does anybody have any questions on revenues?
What is the, we had about 437,000 coming from prior year revenue. Where is that coming from, or how are we calculating that for this year? That's kind of a new line item. It's a pretty big number.
So when you're, depends on the nature of the prior funding. When things have been allocated and approved, then it gets carried over. And it depends on that particular source, and I can give you a breakdown. Again, it gets to be about classifications.
Mm-hmm. No, I figured out something coming over. I just didn't know what that big line item was.
So when we have approved a funding source, such as whether it's SPLOST or whether it's another LMIG or something like that, and the project is ongoing, and we've already identified and allocated those funds, I'm sure we identify that funding source.
So, a question on general property taxes. You said our tax digest is going to increase a good bit this year. You base this number on keeping the millage rate the same. But the general property tax recommended for this year is less than last year. So that doesn't square up to me. Because if we keep the millage the same, tax digest goes up 10%. We should bring a lot more money in based on last year's number.
And part of that
Our
is,
budget's actually got it going down.
so part of that is to cover the increase in requested expenditures that we have in the budget. The presentation that Clint has made as far as the analysis of the numbers envisions keeping the millage rate flatlined at 8.94 to be able to fund the total services. So that takes into consideration the amount of anticipated now. What we discussed is that in years past, we've been very conservative with our estimates, whether it's revenues or whether it's expenditures. And that has given us a little bit of fallback when we've had, let's say, more revenues come in than what we estimated. What I have been advised by Clint is that we are projecting more on a on-point estimate than we are on a more conservative estimate. But as far as answering your questions, We're taking what we estimated last year that we were gonna collect in property taxes. We're falling short of that.
Okay, we're not collecting as much.
We have not collected the amount that we had projected. So at the time we started the documentation presentation, we were at $8 million in collections, and we had anticipated over $10 million in collections. And we extrapolated out that we were going to collect a certain percentage over the next 3 months. And based on that, it looked like we were going to take in less than we had anticipated last year.
Yeah, and the numbers, just to put numbers to it. Our budget last year was 10.6 in general property tax. So I will see in the numbers this year being 10.2. So we're estimating we're collecting $400,000 less than last year's budget. But what you're saying is we over budgeted for general property taxes last year.
It appears that we
It appears that way.
overestimated our collections. And of course, until June 30th, we won't know for certain. But as we're tracking, as of when this was done, as far as the numbers that were used, I believe are through beginning of April, maybe into the March numbers, we were at that level of over $8 million in collections rather than $10 million.
Okay, so it just looks like we're going to collect less.
Yes, sir.
No, that makes sense. But it was like 3.6% down, and I was just wondering how we're going to collect less this year. But okay, that's good.
So what I think that we were basing last year was when they had the first change, the House Bill 589, and we were doing some estimates on the increase that the percentages of the reevaluations of the residential properties, and that we estimated the $10 million collections. Then our estimates were, we came in a little bit lower than our estimates.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, that's in the revenue side, that's the big line item. I didn't see anything else that stood out from a revenue perspective that didn't look.
So last year we didn't have a history with the reassessments. This year we have a history. We know what the reassessments came in, and then
and our local option sales tax, we think we're going to hit 2.3 this year. We're pretty confident that, because I know the actuals were only 1.5 in here.
yeah, that's based on the collections. And at the time that we were creating the information, we're a month delayed because our collections come in a month later, and so we are projecting based on those numbers. We're confident that those are right.
And what's driving the increase in local option sales tax? Is it all the new restaurants we got in town, like Pike Plaza?
We don't get a statistic review from the
That'd be
state.
so nice.
It would be, and it would also be nice to get confirmation on how much they've collected.
Yeah, right.
But we can't tell you exactly, since it's collected as a general collection and then distributed to the localities. I can only project.
We just have to bogey that we're going to increase about 15% next year.
And that was based on the charting that we do throughout the year.
And we don't have that huge sale of assets to claim this year either.
Yeah, that's a big number that's going down.
Very big.
Are there any? I know we've got the other board that we sold some assets with this year. Are there any? Are there funds there that are going to be transferred to the board of commissioners at a certain point, or are those going to reside with that facilities authority?
That is really a discussion that you guys can consider. It's I believe I have the information here. We know what the sales for the different properties were. So you're looking over $200,000.
Roughly, that's what's in that account. I think that's all the questions I had on like revenue coming in. That's fairly straightforward from the general fund.
So the questions that may or may not have been answered is that we'd like to see numbers for possible raises, and then confirmation on the total employment count that makes up our salaries so far.
Yes, definitely.
All right, so we have a breakdown of the general fund expenditures by type that will be outlined in the information and materials that will be provided to you. And again, going back up, what you were provided under revenues was this documentation. This is what's in the red book. When you get the budget guide summary, and once it's finalized and published, then you'll have the additional information, which I'm going to show you in the departments. Will include information like this, which will give you a breakdown on what our general fund expenditures look like and where they come from. But as you see, the personal services and employee benefits figure is broken down here. And that is the majority of our general fund expenditures. We have a breakdown for other financing uses, debt services, the other costs and contingencies that we talked about. We have identified $50,000 in contingencies and other costs. Payment to outside agencies that we have, the capital outlays. You can see that supplies and utilities take up a good bit of our expenditures. And then purchases and contract services.
Rob, I got a few just general questions around. I know the group insurance we talked about a lot, but if I'm not picking on David because he's here, but like the Board of Elections, their group insurance in 2024, 2025 was $26,000. And the recommended this year is $62,000, which is 132% increase in 2 years in group insurance. And that's pretty much across the board. It's not just because it's the Board of Elections. I mean, is that how much our group insurance, I mean, it's gone up over 100% in 2 years. I don't understand, how do we manage this going forward if group insurance continues to be such a large increase?
You have to look at what the county is contributing and paying for that process. And that's why we want to go out for bid this year and looking for trying to be cost effective in what these providers, but the providers historically have had increases. And with David's department in general, we added an employee. We had some additional elections. So these are based on the actual numbers that we have to date. So what we've taken is their number from last year that we have that's known, and we've added a 15% increase based on the projected 15% increase in our insurance. They're correlating benefits. So no, it has not gone up for David's office 100%.
It's just because I've added an employee and
Right. And some of the employees changed positions, they changed, there was an increase given based on the duties that was done last year, and then we added the position that you all approved.
And then I asked about the tax assessor's office. Where does Norman Associates fit in? How are we bucketing
So
this new contract?
I can go back down, or back up to the various departments, but let me get back to your question. So this gives you a good background on the Board of Elections and Registrations. It's going to give you a profile, we give you information about that and code sections related to the House Bill 623. You can see there the staffing plan, whereas we've had the staffing for the last 3 years, but we added the full-time position in the new classification. So we'll have to double check on the 49 number. But there was a classification for a full-time employee. You see you have the election supervisor, the registrar. We actually have part-time previously that we have converted into a full-time registrar, and we have the full-time election system supervisor. So previously there were 2 part-timers, and that's where you get into a second election system specialist. And then we have the 5-member board that receives the poll manager is a temporary position, the poll worker. That gives you, while the numbers haven't changed, the classifications have changed. David, I don't know if you want David to elaborate anymore. Do you have any more questions on that before I go to the tax assessor? So the item that I addressed earlier, budget highlights for the Board of Elections is that the increases from prior year relate to insurance and retirement contributions that we are projecting across the board.
Yeah.
Also, we put a note in here about the advanced voting, but when you get into the requested, I've got my cursor on this number here. This was related to the poll workers and contract services, 105,000. This is what I addressed with David before we presented this to you on April 28th, is that based on the historic nature of 50,000, 24, 25, and the actual year-to-date, 24,575, understanding that we had budgeted this year, this was an area we thought that we could reflect a historic expenditure, understanding that if we do have extra elections that we may need to increase that number. But that was one area related to Joint Board of Elections registration that we can modify. So did I cover the questions from the Board of Elections?
Yeah, because his budget stayed pretty much the same, with the exception of the group insurance.
All right, so I'm going to jump down to the tax assessor. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, Board of Equalization is next, but it's real.
You want me to go to Board of
No,
Equalization?
no, I'm saying it's real small. So that's
Yeah. No, I'd rather fill your questions and then provide your information, and then you'll be able to go through, if you don't have questions.
On tax commissioner, nothing stands out there. It's fairly straightforward. Again, their biggest increase is because of group insurance.
Right.
But employees are pretty much the same. Everything else is holding steady.
As far as the number of, I'll address that after the tax assessor.
I took this document, Rob, and AI generated an Excel document from it. It's pretty cool.
And we were talking about that. So for the tax assessor profile plan, getting back to your question about the contract services, and I'll answer that here in a minute. It gives you a background. It tells you about the number of parcels and those kind of things that are broken down. But we see that we have a 5-member board. We have the chief appraiser. We have 4 appraisers for a total of 10 positions, but basically 5 employees. An appraiser position did come vacant, and what the board of assessors agreed to do was that rather than fill in that position, use that to approve the Norman contract account, which is what you guys approved on the $85,000 contract for the additional services. They had already been working on the commercial services. So the position that had been previously funded, that was used to apply toward the contract services. And so what has been discussed over the years, and I don't know if I'm just anticipating your question, but one of the things that the county tried to accomplish was let's do this all in-house. And to be able to do this all in-house, we need to have adequate staffing, whether it's training or numbers or both. And when it was deemed that we weren't getting the job done that was needed to address the consent order, it was agreed to consider the Norman and Associates as contract services. It went out for bid and proposal, and they started with the residential properties, and that's where we see. So we have that listed under contract services. One of the notes that we had on the tax assessors for my notes were we need to confirm our numbers for the contract services, which you and I had talked about, is that we had an existing contract of $80,000 related to the commercial, and then they had $85,000 related to the subdivisions and the cities and so forth. And they were talking yesterday, and I provided you the documentation from the meeting related to the rural land, and they'll be going through and checking all those numbers as well. Various departments also that I have in my notes, and again, these are Clint's notes, and again, I have to make this very clear. This is not a finalized document, and what I'm providing you is with the consent of Clint. They said, hey, do you mind if I share this information for our workshop, since he was not going to be able to be here to be answering some of your more detailed questions that I might not be able to answer.
Yeah. So I think my question on the tax assessor office is their budget last year was $245,000 for regular employees. This year it's $252,000. So if we've lost a position, I would expect that regular employee budget to go down for this year.
The difference though is that we lost what we didn't fill was one of the appraisers. So we have 3 staff members that were doing appraisal services for, and there's right now, besides the chief appraiser, there's only 2. But previously we lost a personal property appraiser.
So we're retiring that position?
This was reflecting the filling of that position.
Okay, so we're going to fill that position.
That is something that was being discussed.
Okay.
Whereas the other position is being covered by the contract services.
On my sheet, it's about a $40,000 reduction.
I've got, make sure I'm looking right for 2025, 2026 budget, I had $245,000 in regular.
279,015 is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, so here I got my cursor on what was last year's 279, and this year we're recommending the 239,
Okay.
which is covering some of that contract
Okay,
services.
yep. Okay, good.
Any other questions about tax assessors? Since I'm right here, I'm gonna.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at tax commissioner on 245. That's it. You're,
I just wonder if you're
I know, I
still
was looking at tax commissioner. I hadn't slid down yet.
So with the tax commissioner, the number that you were looking at, we have the tax commissioner, we have a clerk part-time, we have 3 full-time clerks, and total positions of having the 5. Plenty had provided some information early on before I came back from the training and discussed the Senate Bill 33 and Senate Bill, I believe, 566 that addresses the notice of assessment changes that we'll discuss. But, I had requested that we modify this to reflect information related to Senate Bill 33, which basically mandates the 581 floating base year homestead exemption statewide, so we no longer can opt out. And once signed by the governor, it authorizes an L-host as an alternative funding source, since we did not opt in previously to House Bill 581 and take advantage of the FLOST. We don't have the FLOST. Some counties did vote for a FLOST. Our option would be L-host. And what would happen is once this, if it's signed, I'm assuming it may or may not, I can't assume. So if it's signed by the governor, then we'll need to contact our representatives and ask, you guys have to make a decision, do we want to ask to see if we want to put the L-host up for consideration. And the problem is, from a standpoint, y'all are also going to be looking at your SPLOST running out in 2028. So this L host will be in addition to any SPLOST. The current SPLOST that you have would be good through 2028.
So 733, you're saying that it's going to freeze property assessments?
It mandates a floating base year homestead exemption. So, but at the training that we went to in April, it basically says now what's going to happen is that your base year is going to be established at 2026.
Okay. Sure. And then they're only going to let assessments rise by a certain.
And it had originally talked about following the indexes as far as having, but it says no caps on budget caps. So we're looking at the sales tax cap is that we're going to have available to offset the reduction in property taxes from homesteads, because we anticipate that there'll be homestead increases. It's still going to be 9%. It's a 5 and a 4. So you got up to 4 pennies that you can add to your 5% sales tax. But it says can only increase millage rate by the rate of inflation. That is
Millage rate or assessments?
the millage rate is what that's what they were saying in the training.
I heard that. Guess we'll tackle that one.
It says the removal of the opt-out effective tax year 2027 and setting base rate at 2026. My takeaway was that I need to contact Beth and Marty upon signature to talk about local legislation. Because what they're talking about is whether they're going to have a special session. Because if we don't have one, we're not going to be able to get on a November ballot. And we won't have an L host in place to be able to offset any homestead savings until 2027.
Yeah, I thought SB 33 just blocked. I thought it said assessments could rise more. We're probably saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Could rise more than 3% or the rate of inflation. So it's gone. We won't have a year where
I think that was part of it.
goes up 10%.
Then the end bill ended up. So once it gets signed, we're going to do an in-depth analysis and we can talk about that in more detail. And then Senate Bill 566. Now, I referenced Senate Bill 33 yesterday at the tax assessor's office, but in conjunction with that is Senate Bill 566, which revises the notices of assessment.
That's what I'm interested in.
Right? So it removes the requirement to do an estimated rollback rate. So what happened last year in our county is that we followed the new provisions on coming up with an estimated rollback rate, and the Board of Education opted not to estimate, and because they didn't estimate a millage rate or millage rollback rate, they used the same formulas from the previous notices assessments. So our notices had 2 different, which was confusing. So they have removed that. And the state is supposed to provide the notice of assessment documentation. They haven't done it yet as of yesterday.
And so this year, your assessment notice is just going to have your assessment value of your property and no estimated taxes on it.
That's what we understand, but until the state provides that form, I don't know what it looks like.
Which is good, because that's what people should be looking at. It's just
Right.
your assessed value of your home and saying, do I want to?
This is not a tax bill, has not been
Yes,
sufficient.
right.
Even though it's been on there, it's still confusing because folks are saying this is what my tax.
So they're supposed to go out May 15th. How does that come in?
That's a good question.
Okay. So it's not happening by the 15th. But what effect does that have on planning if they don't go out by the 15th? That just means everything starts backing up and
They're going to have their
digest is
department
delayed, right?
delayed because they're going to have that 45-day period for appeals.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Any other questions on tax assessors and tax commissioners? Where would you like to go next? I do have folks from the fire department. Do y'all mind if we address the fire department?
Not at all.
As long as we go back up and come back down, that'd be fine.
What number are they, Rob? What,
80.
80?
80 to 89.
So our department profile for the fire department, and right now, currently, we have the chief, the deputy chief, and the training officer. And I think our deputy chief and training officers are here. Please say a prayer for our chief as he's dealing with some stuff, and we'll be out for a little bit. We do have our part-time, paid part-time firefighters that you previously approved. They are currently at 29. We're looking at increasing by 1 to 30. And the volunteer firefighters, we're still staying at 37. I believe from my discussions with the chief that he feels like he's pretty well staffed and that there's waiting lists for volunteers because the fire department of Pike County has become a place to be as far as providing services. And it's a good. Now, the number one item under budget highlights is what we are discussing, is that we did not include in the numbers that you have in your red book. They're requesting 24/7 coverage for 4 personnel, 2 stations, 2 at Zebulon, 2 at Concord. And currently, Chief Poss, if you don't mind, we have 2 at the at Zebulon at this point in time.
Yes, we have 2 at Zebulon, and we want to put the one more truck up in Concord. Can I speak on this? So what's going on is about a third of our calls are ran on this side over here. And it takes
Which side?
okay, so let me break it down. So pretty much the Concord
Okay.
side. Yeah, I'm just listening over here.
The
Yeah,
corridor.
it's the east corridor. So
Okay.
that's what we're talking about. Is trying to get some coverage over there. So it takes 10 minutes for people to get from Station 7 just to Concord, and then plus we have above and beyond past all that. So that's just 10 minutes to get emergency response and fire EMS there. The national standard for NFPA and ISO is 11 people, 11 firemen on scene within 10 minutes. That's the national standard. With this would give us at least 4 people going, plus our volunteers, plus everybody else. We have a very strong volunteer base. Most of our personnel work for other departments. So the training is already there. We don't have to worry about the insurance issue, which I see is coming up a couple of times, because these will all be put on part-time basis. This is just another step in helping us build our department. As the call volume increases, you see our calls right there. So far, when the report was ran, we ran 630 calls for the year up till that point, which is about 3 weeks ago. And a third of those calls, like I said, were over on that area, the Concord side.
So what are the calls, the breakout of them? Fire, wrecks,
A lot of
medical emergency, how do they break out?
So you're looking, fires are relatively on the lower end, but we have a lot of motor vehicle accidents over Henry County. And I've never seen so many automobile accidents here. People like to go really fast on back roads, which causes an issue. We do a lot of extrication. So those extrication equipment that we bought last year really helps out. So you're looking 30%, 40% EMS calls.
Yeah.
And then 20-30% MVCs, traumatic injuries, as we call them, traumatic injuries. And then maybe about 10 to 20% fires. So they just ran one out the other day. There's a fire out there. So fires are not as common as you would think, but we do run a lot more here than I do in Henry County.
So if you go north-south of Highway 18 and then east-west of 19, you're saying most things you're going to respond to are sort of north of 18 and west of 19 in that area?
I was going to say that.
Okay.
That's,
But
the
it's,
barracks is going to be pretty close to you. 109 is a pretty hot spot.
so it's one of
Yeah,
those
for
kind
us.
of the.
It's kind of on the south side of 18.
Mm-hmm.
And then the north side, Pentonville's had some pretty good doozies, and of course 362.
Okay.
So between those highways, it stays pretty even there.
So
But just as an example, when we were sitting here, we had a brush fire go out at Blackman Road. Everybody had to go from here out to Blackman where
So Concord's our station one.
Getting there.
At station one, there was 32 calls out there in the month of April. 32 calls out there.
What was that, Zebulon?
Sir?
What was that, Zebulon?
A lot more.
Yeah, a lot. I didn't pull Zebulon's numbers just because I did the overall. I'm just was concerned on what was going on with Concord. Zebulon's going to be the hotspot because typically where your populations are, that's going to be our hotspot.
That was the original design, and I thought you were saying that the calls were coming from the west side of the county first. And I said, well, why don't we put these trucks in Concord? But you're not saying that.
Not saying that. No, we need both. We need both because they're both places because we still have, and we haven't even talked about my side of the county, which is out towards, 18 towards Lamar. I don't even have anything out there.
Well,
But we're working on that. We're working on that.
We
That's
tried.
just slow progress.
Right.
It's slow progress. But getting this would establish us, at least getting 4 people coming and going somewhere. That would at least have that. So we're talking about
If we could pause on that and give a minute for you to continue. We have a chart up there that shows about the call volume, but I wanted to just get the history from the discussions and the difference between why it was not put into the budget versus what they are here to present based on the information that you just heard. Several years ago, you all are aware that the county had discussions about transitioning into more of a paid department, and that there was going to be a plan that was put in place. And the chief had implemented a plan, and he came to us during the budget workshops and said, this is the next step and next phase in that plan. And so that first bulleted point, talking about the 2 and 2, which would put somebody on the other side of the county, so to speak, or at least in the middle part, it is anticipating an increase of $280,295 and is not budgeted. We estimated that it would take about a third, a 0.3 mil allocation, or a similar reduction from another category to be able to fund what they're requesting. So I just wanted to throw that out so you have that background. Go ahead, Chief Austin.
Yeah, so if you're looking at just the breakdown by stations, you got 6, 5, and 2. There are 18 to 24 calls that are out there. But you got to remember, when we're coming from Zebulon, headed out towards Concord, and it's 10 minutes just to get to that point, and then not anywhere else beyond that. So putting 2 people out there, 2 personnel, we've already had the station there. Everything's established. We got the trucks. We have everything ready. We just need the personnel.
So nobody's out there at the moment?
No, it's just volunteers. So if
So
we
it's
get
just
your
volunteers
call,
to come.
if we get your call, then somebody has to go there, get the truck, and then head out. Now we have some really close volunteers that live there, and as long as they're, at home, it doesn't take that long.
if this were to be approved, this 280 is for the manpower. We have the equipment in place.
Yeah, the equipment's already there. The equipment's already there. So we just need the manpower at this point.
So we're going from about 988, 642 up to 1,187.
And this doesn't do anything to help our eyesight, right? It just helps.
It will.
Response. No, it does help eyesight.
It will, but it won't be a significant increase. I don't want to lead you wrong.
Yeah.
Because it will help the ISO because we will get people on scene quicker. Which in the grand scheme of things will. Over time, once we get more personnel, more stations, and more things like that, then we'll hit the ISO. The only thing that's going to help ISO right this minute is a training facility. We can get huge points with just building a training facility. You got to have the land, you got to have the infrastructure put in there. There's very specific things you got to have.
And that's part of the public, county facilities that we've been talking about.
And I'm not trying to open an additional can of worms, but you heard him say that most calls they go on are medical calls. We're knocking on $1 million on that ambulance contract. Just several years back, I can remember it, $300,000. So again, not opening up a can of worms. However, that may be something we need to take a look at.
It's being looked at.
It is.
I was going to let him address that. He can address that.
Yeah, I just that's kind of overlapping of services.
So
It is, but it's not, because at any time we can run out of ambulances in this county, and we do.
All the time.
All the time, yes, sir. So at least we'll have EMT and medical trained personnel responding until they get there or making those decisions.
We're looking at adding 4 more medical first responder vehicles this year. So we're taking what we already have. We're not buying anything new, but we're going to put more equipment.
And
More vehicles.
Yes.
Exactly.
So one of the things that have been discussed is that several years ago, there was a truck, or bus, whatever you want to call it, as far as the acronym, other people will call an ambulance, that we were provided, and that we still have. And there was some discussion about using that to help with some of the first responders and those type of things in coordination with our existing service that will help and possibly get a good baseline of information for the county to make some certain decisions. You're looking at what they're requesting. This is the number that was modified down to the 498 under the documents that you have in the Red Book. This was requested to meet the 2 and 2 for Zebulon and Concord.
And you have to have 2. Can't just have 1.
But the standard in the 2 in, 2 out rule for firefighting is 2. And if you go on a medical call and you're doing CPR, you obviously can't do medical life-saving treatment with just one person. So that's where the 2 would come from, actually. And to set it up properly, we'd probably run one on the fire truck and 1 on a brush truck. That
But
way
we could do
have-
2 in Concord and not 2 in Zebulon.
Yeah, that's what
You
we
could do-
want,
you
2
just
in
did-
here and 2
If
in
we
there.
have to, you could do 2 at one location.
Yes, I want 2 at this location and 2 at the other location. Total 4. And we have 4 people come.
So since you brought it up, Commissioner Daniel, this is the information. We are under contract until next year with our AmeriPro provider. The contract provided for a 3% annual increase during the term of a contract for each of the years. This is the final year, and this is the number, as you see right here, that reflects the 3% increase for, which would be July 1, 26 through June 30th, 27. And I just want to confirm, because we do have a employee software system, but we are right at 180 as far as total employees, but that includes all sheriff's department as well.
3% of that increase, according to this, was $26,000. It's in the contract.
Yeah, it was in the high 800s, I think, and when you add in the 3%, it came to 925. We were just under 900,000.
Mhm.
I mean, I can show you that.
I got it right here. I'm looking at it.
Okay, you got it?
Yeah.
Well, let me put it on the screen for everybody else.
Okay.
So we are budgeted at 898, 222.
Mhm.
All right, Mr. Chairman, you had something you wanted to talk about?
Well, going down the list here, there's some up, there's some down. The one that stood out to me as I go down the list is the district attorney, went up 80 grand, actually 81,000.
So there's some discussions, and I have not seen the signed bill about what changes were going to take place statewide, but there is one of the bills that involved the district attorney's office. But the interim district attorney had come in with a request, and we did not enter a complete, or we did not fulfill the complete request, but one of the requests that they had was adding a victim assistant position. It's on your department that you have in your book, 22.
It's gone up a little bit every year, it seems like, but that seems to be a huge amount at one time.
So what we have here is you see at the bottom, this, that I'm scrolling here, victim witness advocate. And this is a position that is being requested to be filled. Everything else is, for the most part, from a position standpoint. You are certainly welcome to see what their request is. I have that document if you want to have that, where we sat down, Clint and I, and based on the information that was provided during the request, we went ahead and put in the victim witness advocate as they requested. They get a description of what was occurring in different counties, and they provided information and the need and how the other counties were funding these positions. And that's what you see the reflection is a full-time position for victim witness advocate. Right now, they're having one of their other employees doing that work, and they need a dedicated employee.
And that's split amongst the 4 counties. And so they're saying that our share of that one person's 80 grand?
This is for Pike County. So,
Oh, strictly.
right. So the Griffin Judicial Circuit funding that you see that we allocate by percentages, that's a different budget. That's on, I think, up above this, which I have here because we still don't have that number either. That is your Department 20 under court services, and that involves the judges and our allocations for juvenile court. This is for particularly just the district attorney's office. We have contracts that we enter into in the district attorney's office and the public defender's office that are, they have provided the breakdown for the different counties in the Griffin Judicial Circuit to show what the other counties are paying for these similar positions. We are not providing the same staff that other counties are, and we're not just doing a prorated share.
I was going to say, because there's not 8 people in that office. Not in Pike County.
Can you go back to 20? Can you show the budget? Flip over. So they're going from 215 last year, and they request 328, which is 113,000 extra dollars for employees.
Well, and other services, and I can itemize.
I'm sure it's the raises and stuff like that.
Well, there were raises and there were also services. Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, so they have given you numbers that say we need a victim witness advocate to make $80,000 a year at Pike County. But who are these victims that, I mean, I look in the newspaper every week, who are they going to be witnessing to? It's a valid question. Did not say it kind of the wrong way.
That's what we're in here for. You don't have to approve it.
So in their cover letter, they have a financial officer that provided, they provided us with, Fayette County has 3 investigators. Obviously, Pike County has the one that's listed. They have 3, and this is just what they provided. Victim witness coordinators. Spalding has 3 investigators and 3 victim witnesses. Upson has 2 investigators and 2 victim witnesses. And all they were kind of asking for was that they have 1 in Pike County. They said that they could trim the fringe line items, including supplements and indirects and burnt costs, which we already, when we talk about these percentages and so forth, we already kind of modified that down. But they were looking at their current budget and were operating with operational expenses that they were requesting of $7,800. They were estimating their taxes and FICA and so forth at comp at $15,525 increase. And the position itself is $51,750 is what they're contemplating. So when you add the benefit, $51,750 plus the $15,525, you're looking at a total package of, 67.
In response to Ken's question on that one, we have a part-time, that worker split one between Upton and Pike.
I'm not the district attorney's office to answer that question, but it would be more than what they have now. So, you guys get to make that decision. I'm just telling you what we put in the book was based on taking out other things that they asked for and adding that position for your consideration.
But not a constitutional office, right?
No.
So,
And my understanding is the governor has not yet appointed. And this came from the interim district attorney. They was uttered in, it's a Kevin Oschus, who is serving as his financial officer.
Because I got a question on solid waste, but do y'all have any questions from Department 45 and up, just so we don't have to keep flipping back and forth? Okay. On the solid waste, went from 32 to 215,000 on the solid waste.
Yeah, hold on a second. So do we have any other questions on the district attorney's office?
There's no mandate for anything on, they would have to do that.
There is again, and I'll have to check because I don't know if it passed or. There was a bill that was discussing district attorneys on areas. It was House Bill 1020, called the District Attorney Compensation Reform Act. And it was allowing some opt-outs for the various things and opting in by 2030. And it was going to be modifying the allocations based on an 88% of the federal district judge base. It may provide locality pay by counties, allows counties to offer fringe benefits, may choose existing retirement versus providing benefits and locality pay. And we'll have to review any of our local acts. I don't recall any of our local legislation tying the district attorney's pay to any specific percentages. So I'll have to check that to see if there's any mandates that have arisen, but I'm not aware of it. So I wanted to give you that background so you said, well, Rob told us. There was House Bill 1020 that's
I didn't understand it. Pushed me.
Yeah.
Pushed it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Chairman. I just wanted to wrap up the district attorney's office.
I'm sorry, I thought we were good with that.
hey, bro, I just got one quick question.
Okay.
I was Public Works. They're pretty much the same next year. Did we expect that?
Well, part of it is that it's the same because we had some of the other funding for the roads and so forth. But that is one item that's going to change in your red book in the next meeting because there is so to give you the full background, Animal Control lost a truck based to age and disrepair. And they are currently driving one of the trucks from Public Works. And what has been discussed is providing a new vehicle for Public Works because they now have a truck that's in disrepair and throwing oil all over the place. And the estimated cost to get the type of vehicle that is necessary for the director would be about $92,000, which we would add back into the capital improvement portion of your budget. And then the truck that he's currently driving would then go to Animal Control, which would be suitable for their work with their animal dangerous and vicious dogs and being able to return the other truck back to Public Works for another backup. So
What type of truck is this?
the
A four-door, four-wheel drive?
extended crew cab,
350, 450?
150.
let me get you the information. I don't want
Talking about the one at the,
The one he's
Yeah.
talking about,
one animal control is.
no, the one he's talking about purchasing for,
and just for a piece of information, it's not going to cost it. Chris is willing to trade the extended cab for a crew cab, give extended cab and to the animal control. And he provided me the documentation, and I'll have to look to see if I have it here as far as the estimate that was obtained. And I can get you the particulars on that. It says it's a F450 4x4 crew cab.
so that's a tandem wheel truck.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
You,
Probably bodies or side bodies or something, dual bed.
yes, sir.
Because
They have-
I knew if we were going back with what he's got, or just a regular
No, that-
truck, that's,
No, the
That's
truck
not a
that he
nine.
has right now is going to go to animal control.
Yeah.
And part of their request also included a dump truck. We did not fund at approximately $203,000. But what we discussed is that if there is an additional need, that we can do leasing on that rather than, or renting, I should say, a piece of equipment for a day than having to spend $203,000 right now without a capital.
I'm good until 61, Briar. I can't remember what number you were going to.
He was on solid waste.
45, went from 32 to 215,
So,
increase of 183,000.
yeah, let me deal with that.
What'd you say, Ken, 61?
Yeah, I'm down to 61. But
Okay, I got one above that. Yeah.
There it is.
So, one of the issues that we have in solid waste is not only our contract with the transfer station, but we also have our landfill post closure requirements.
Mhm.
And there has been some monitoring ongoing, as you're well aware of. And we have several wells out there. But we increased the contract services to cover additional monitoring that's potentially required by the EPD. So we have submitted a corrective action plan based on the monitoring levels that were discovered in the last couple of years that were presented to EPD, and we never heard anything. And then we had a response back. Our, as you know, we have a contract with Harbin and Associates,
Mhm.
and this is from they're estimating $150,000 to $195,000 in costs. And what we've talked about as far as adding either additional wells and trenching and those kind of things, anything that we expend is going to be subject to being reimbursed. We can get up to, I think, $500,000 reimbursed from the Hazardous Mitigation Trust Fund. And so that's what we had received from our consultants back in early March. That the quote that they received was less than $150,000, but it also was up to possibly $175,000, and then anticipating there may be some increase in cost by the time we got to the project. We're also discussed about the possibility of covering it over a multi-year
Mhm.
budget process rather than just all in 1 year.
Okay.
But again, what we would anticipate any expenditures related to that kind of mitigation is going to be reimbursable to the county.
Does that show up on the revenue side or no?
It will,
But it
it'll be an
doesn't.
offset.
It doesn't currently, right?
At this point in time, we have not applied for it, so no.
Right. Okay.
That would be a budget amendment.
Okay.
if we made that application.
All right, the next question I've got above 61 is the senior citizen. I'm looking at up and down, and they've cut themselves $26,000.
Yeah, what we've done, they didn't cut themselves that, no,
Oh, they didn't.
we did.
Okay.
And I'll show you why here in a minute.
Okay. Uh, 56.
So we have actually one less position for this year,
Okay.
as you see.
Yes.
But our biggest thing was related to the meals. And we had budgeted $80,000 for congregate meal expenses.
Mhm.
At the time that we were developing the documentation, we were running at actuals. You can see the year before
Right.
we had, and so they had requested the same amount. We had reduced that down based on actuals. The same thing with the home delivered meals. You can see in previous years we were at 52,628. They had requested and we applied, and this was based on some changes in funding sources that they were anticipating. So we budgeted $92,000 for the home delivered meal and related expenses, and year to date at the time we prepared this information was at 48.5. They had requested 93, which is similar to the request last year, and we reduced that down. So these are the two numbers that reflect the reductions. That it was not based on their request, it was based on what we were tracking with actual numbers year to date.
Okay. Before we go to Commissioner Pullen, 61 department, anything above that? Anything above 61? I'm trying to keep some kind of organization. Okay, Commissioner Pullen, what you got on 61?
Rob, thanks for sending me there. So the authorities, we see very little of their budgets. So Rob did send along their budget. I noticed that, I guess I got a couple of comments on the rec authority. One, they have a revenue problem that I think they have to figure out how to get around or how to work towards better. If you look at their budget, they've only got $346,000 in total revenue this year, with expenditures of a lot more. So I know their authority. We don't have a lot of control over them, but they've got to figure out how to bring more money in. Because I don't think it's fair that we spend $750,000 plus on the rec authority. And I noticed also their employees have salaries baked in, which our regular employees at the county level don't have salaries, or don't have raises baked in yet. So I did notice that. I love the rec authority down there too. I went down there the other day, there's like 10,000 people, it felt like, down there. But half the cars are from Spalding County and Upson County and Lamar County. I know I'm just opining here, but they've got to figure out a way to charge people outside this county more to play, because it's not right for this county to be subsidizing people from Spalding County to play ball. I don't know if y'all agree with that or not, but I think if you're coming here to play ball from Spalding County, you got to pay more. I don't think we ought to ask our seniors to put the bill on Spalding County kids playing ball down here. So I'm not, yeah, so, I mean, over their overall budget, I think we got a lot to do to work on their budget. I don't like their number they've got to figure out to me a plan for next year for bringing in a lot more revenue. So we don't have to subsidize out of town. And I love it. I mean, I think, look, they're buying gas down here. They're going out to eat. They're doing all that kind of stuff too. So I don't dispute the fact that probably spending money in Pike County, but I don't think it's right to ask the senior citizens in this county. They already get upset with paying school tax. I don't think it's fair to ask them to also subsidize, little kiddies from Spalding County playing ball in Pike County.
That was discussed.
I know it's discussed. I feel like it's discussed every year, but we're still at the $750,000 mark again this year, and they've got to figure out how to live on their own. And if you notice, they got two big checks from the federal government this year that are coming in, and I don't see any. There's nowhere in the budget that's got plans for that stuff either.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Jenkins hit the nail on the head. I understand historically and some things, but we had very candid conversations with each of the authorities that the goal is to get them to be self-sufficient. And to get there, I certainly understand your comments, don't disagree. And I think the folks over at the Parks and Rec Authority understand and are trying to make efforts to work toward that process.
Yeah, I don't know how to sit back at the table with them before we finalize this, but I think we just have to have more discussions on. Y'all need to tighten up a little bit, figure out how you can generate more revenue next year before you expect us to write a big check.
Amen.
And my next question, you got anything else, Commissioner?
Can I ask some clarification on that?
Yeah.
Is that something that you want the county manager and Clint to follow up with them, or do you want me to investigate a possible workshop? I just don't know whether that was something that can be done by June 10th.
Yeah, I mean, for time purposes, I think y'all are welcome.
Okay.
Back to
Yeah, I was gonna go down to 74. Anybody got any questions of above 74? Okay, planning and development. I know last year I can remember that it was 8,000 under, and this time we're going up to 33, adding an additional 33. Department 74.
Yeah, I'm just grabbing my notes.
Okay.
So what you have on the screen are from Clint's notes, and then I have my notes from the documentation from our meetings, because I've transposed what I have from each of the files. And I do have each of the files from each of the meetings that we've had with each of the departments that reflect my understanding. Is I know that Commissioner Jenkins attended several of the meetings. As I explained to them, I was not there to kind of debate with them on the budget allocations at that point in time. I just wanted to be able to understand what their requests were. And then Clint and I would analyze the documentation, which we did. And then we came up with the recommendation based on what state mandates or on what historical data supplied. And then we contacted the departments where there was a significant change prior to submitting the proposal to you on April 28th. And that's kind of how the process went down. So on the planning development side of things, the staffing, they were looking at an additional part-time code enforcement officer. Now, what we had indicated, and I would say this is across the board, but particularly for the planning and development, was that all the departments asked for increases for their staff. Mm-hmm. So the request that came in was significantly higher than what was recommended, because we did not include unless they were constitutional officers. Mm-hmm. The concept that we're having now is that our assistant in the animal control is experienced with code enforcement. And we did not include an additional amount. He has requested an additional amount, but what we are looking at is doing a shared responsibility that he continue to do his work with animal control services, and then there will be allocated an additional 20 hours, not above and beyond what he's doing, but 20 hours out of his current work. But if it's going to be above and beyond, we'll have to give him extra money. We have not included the extra allocation at this point in time, but that is the extra position as a part-time code enforcement officer. Right now, we have one full-time designated, and that's Jeff Hilton. And then bringing Shane Powell in to do both his work at animal control as well as providing part-time code enforcement services for the county, trying to help minimize the impact on hiring another employee because of his experience.
Is that one reason why animal control is down less, $4,000 less for that reason?
Yes.
Okay, that was going to be one of my questions, so that's answered.
And part of that is also looking at the adjusted costs that we were tracking.
Okay, then EMA's down $6,000.
And part of that was related to grants, and sometimes we have to allocate contributions for grants. And this year we only have the one hazard mitigation grant that I see that's in the budget. Was there anything else under planning and development?
I mean, no, that was just, I saw that number increased 33,000. It went down $8,000 last year and it's up 33 this year.
Yeah, as I mentioned, Commissioner Pullen, we do have contract services broken down for each of the departments. So if there's any other departments that we need to see, that I can provide that sheet.
Yes. No, I just wonder what that big bucket was.
Right.
Yeah, I think I saw contract services were, I mean, in all the budget line items, contract services come out to about 1.1 million. So I was just trying to figure out what all makes up that 1.1 million.
The most common contract service that we have across the board is all our copier printers, our phone systems, and our IT.
Going on down, the only thing I have, 76 agribusiness.
Yeah, agribusiness, that's 40,000.
So that was another discussion that we had with an authority that we were looking for them to get self-sufficient. And again, as you recall, we increased that number because of the agreement that we have reached to where there is a compensation to the county in the sense of all the money that was put to put the Chestnut Oak above and beyond grant money versus having long-term stability for our extension office and providing a space since we have moved down to the Chestnut Oak facility. And so part of that is to reflect a $28,000 annual payment from the authority for the compensation of building, offset by what was agreed to in that meeting. And I think Commissioner Pullen was there, Chairman, I think you were there. That what a commercial lease arrangement would be for us to be leasing the facilities. The intent is at the end of this agreement and the payback of that figure, which is over in the $500,000 range, at the end of that 20-year period, then that would be a agribusiness facility. Whether there's going to be a continued lease or not, that would be up to the parties. But at this point in time, as you know, we had a dilemma where we had a county building on agribusiness property.
Right. Okay, that answers that.
So that's why we're reflecting now based on the agreement that we reached with the authority. And I do know it was very, very productive. Now, the only thing that I saw and you were provided documentation was that they did request an increase because of providing some services to keep up their property, namely the landscaping and other facilities. Our agreement right now is that Building and Grounds will provide maintenance on the internal side of Chestnut Oak on a regular basis related to the operations of the extension office and miscellaneous. They're going to check when they're out there on the other. But if the agribusiness authority holds an event, then they're responsible because there's bathrooms that are accessible from the outside of that building on the back side of the Chestnut Oak facility. We'll do regular maintenance to the extent as may be necessary, but they're responsible for doing that and providing the supplies and all that in connection with their events. And I think we've reached out. We haven't finalized the written signatures, but we reached the understanding. I did meet with Brooklyn and Rusty within the last month, and it was a good meeting, and I think we've got a good understanding. Now, while we're on that kind of topic, there are security cameras that are available at the Chestnut Oak that are more state of the art. We have received a proposal from our IT that we can do similar security cameras and security measures at other facilities like Public Works and here, which is not included in your Red Book estimate of just under $10,000. It's $9,000 and some change. And I think it was at least 3 or 4 of the county facilities. If you want to entertain that, which I would probably recommend, we probably need to add that back in. Because our experience recently was that what we have in place right now is just, it's a dinosaur and out of date.
Yeah, I think the cameras are protected, especially around, so whatever we need to make it good.
I have a copy of that proposal here if you all want to see it. It's actually,
What do we have around the courthouse and around the office buildings downtown? Are they state of the art or are they still the old stuff?
just to finish that number, 9,237 was the estimate from our IT. I think the sheriff's office maintains the security on the courthouse. And I can't comment on whether that's state of the art or not. I'm sure Wired could provide a comment, but I do know that we've been taking some measures to make sure their cameras are not obstructed.
Still got to cut those trees down.
Yeah, that's right.
I just look at the courthouses like Jackson, Upson. They're gorgeous how they've got the landscaping done around the courthouses now because they no trees. They're real pretty.
We got red dirt.
We got red dirt. Yeah, right.
While y'all are contemplating any other questions, I did want to provide you some information of the efforts that Clint has made. I have to say that we have worked on this together since last year, but he is the author of the majority of statistical information and charts. I just want to give him kudos because I know that last year we talked about demonstrative information is very helpful. He's broken down the different funds and special projects. But for example, here he went into great detail in providing information related to our long-term debt, broken it down to what it's related to. For example, this one is on our motor grader and it gives us the due dates and the principal and interest and totals that we use as part of our budgeting process for each year. It's a great indication in our debt structure, so we have that available. And again, he gives us a breakdown as far as the fiscal year and the charting.
And
This is our current fiscal year.
once he finishes with that, that'll be a document for us.
Yeah, this intent is that this is how we're going to adopt our budgets annually now. Is that we're going to have the budget guide that has what you have in the red book. That information is contained in this document. So when we finalize that this is what you will have to be operating from. So you'll have that. So when you get asked questions from your citizens, you'll have that on your computer or your home or however you want to have it and say, well, hey, let me tell you about that department, how many people they got, and all that. So it will be user-friendly and available for citizens. Statistical information he's provided. This is where, you were asking about the question. This gives us the total of employees. So we were already getting there. I just want to confirm the numbers with the different operations. We have our full-time, we have the part-time, the temporary, the volunteers, and so forth. So you see a total number of, when you start looking at some of the other people that may or may not fall under our employee status, you see a total number there for expenditures of personnel and officials. But as far as the employees that we have in our employee system, we're right. This is a quick blurb on our population. And again, this is what the census said, but we believe that there was probably more there. Again, this is just based on our best projections. This is showing the spike that we had in the single family home permits and where we are currently. So at this point in time, year to date, we're at 87 already.
87 already. Wow.
So we're having another spike.
That seems really high.
Yeah, that seems.
I'll check that number. But I noticed that when we been getting the reports from planning and development,
Is he running that on the calendar year
it may be
or our year?
projected.
Yeah,
Fiscal
from
year.
June, July to
It may not be
June.
year to date. It may be based on.
That is crazy. Like, you can just see COVID, 2020, everybody started moving out to the country. Gee.
Yeah, I don't think that number's right for 2026.
Oh, man.
I think it might be a total projection.
We've been averaging, if we look at our monthly reports, probably 10 or 12. I think it's been as low as 6. That's very low, and as high as 14 for the past few months. So that may be a little.
Yeah, unless it
Maybe
goes back.
fiscal year, I don't know.
Yeah, unless it goes back to
So
last
5
year.
months times 10 or 12.
I know. Could be right.
This is the estimate. Again, going back to your question about tax digest.
More than double in 15 years.
That's the same pattern everybody else has got too. I looked at Lamar County, they track almost exactly 2 hours.
And this is the historical information of what you've done with the millage rate since 2010, 2010.
They're really good document.
And this is the number right here that our current millage rate was based on last year's rollback that we used to formulate the red book. Now, again, with the anticipated increase in the digest, I would anticipate there's going to be a suggested rollback rate. If you guys opt to go with that and not stay with 8.94, then there'll have to be adjustment to be made in the budget. This gives us some neighboring numbers, millage rates. You can see where we are. We're not the lowest like Coweta County, but we're certainly not the highest. Where Spalding County, or the unincorporated area, was at 15.256. This gives you the information of the top 20 property taxpayers in the county. I think you were provided this information previously, but we're going to include that in our materials.
Never seen this before, Rob. This looks good.
Some of y'all may know that based on our discussions that this particular one seems to be out and about in several counties.
Yep.
Building homes. I call this a Clint chart. Gives us the stats for our audited expenditures and revenues. And we're tracking pretty well. Be nice, ideally, for that line to be equal, but a good job of staying area. So that chart's broken down by these numbers here. Key is to end up like we did in 2025 and not like we did in 2024.
And this year, we're still getting to where we are.
Right. We won't know because we won't have final expenditures until 60 days after June 30th.
And we feel that there about this year.
He actually believes we've been tracking pretty well. I think he gave you a report, provided you a chart. It had explanations on it, and it says that we're tracking so far. There were a couple ideas, items that you still need to pay attention to.
Oh, this is really good. Who's the next? I know we're going to talk about people today, but who fills in for Clint when Clint's not there? Like, who is his number two? Does Angela jump in? Did you jump in? Like, who jumps in?
Well, we have one of the items that we have is that, obviously the county manager is deemed as the budget officer and has the access to the information, and I've been working with Clint in his absence. And so he and I continue to talk together. We have to have separation of duties within those responsibilities, but we work as a team. So we are all working together to try to help.
Do we need to talk about a Clint Jr. At a certain point and budgeting another person to back Clint up when he's, because the county's just getting bigger and bigger at the end of the day. So is that something we either need to cross train on or get someone else?
I think one of the things that we talked about is having some cross-training and access to some information internally. I have access to what all Clint has access to as the county manager and budget officer. We had talked about getting some additional access for some of our finance systems to be able to continue on operations when we have an incident. I don't know that we're at a point yet for a assistant at this point, but it's certainly something that we need to continue.
Room either.
Dana, we had nowhere to put him.
I mean, there's no room. At a certain point, we got to get, I think, another finance person.
Well, and as you know, larger counties will actually have a finance department.
Yes. Instead of a finance person. I don't know. I mean, what does that look like? Is that somebody straight out of college that's an accounting major that comes in and works for 2 or 3 years for the county?
There are a lot of options to consider, and it depends again based on budgetary constraints. But you do have folks that are going to training like that. There are intern programs that could be possibly. I know that we talk about every year if there's an intern program that's available that we can take advantage of that we're looking for, and we can designate that particular field. So yes, there are options, and there are folks that you can also look at. Now, I'll say this, we also have the services of our monthly CPA that is not our auditor, because those have to be separate. We have our auditors that will handle the year-end audit. But as you know, that during some time that we've had our consultant step in and provide certain services, so we are able to make use of that as a source too.
So fund balance good through 2025.
We're down, projecting a little bit down because of the budgeting that we took back with the rollback. That's what the projection was. And if you can see, that is what is showing here. Whereas at the end that we just received the audit in, that we came in with a little bit of a fund balance. He believes that we're going to come under. That gives you the stats on the loss collections that are sporadic. Recently, we had a peak in the holiday season in December, and then it's been down a little bit. But still, based on these numbers, it's still higher than it was previously, and that's why we have the estimated loss collections. Same thing, you can see it almost looks real similar to what the loss looked like with the SPLOST. Still higher than some of the low points. One of our concerns is that when we did the upfront financing with our 2022 SPLOST, that when we end with our 2028, we will have not reached the anticipated collection numbers that we had thought that we were projections were. And obviously, this is only through January. You want me to go back?
So our median family income in Pike in 2023 is $102,000. So our county is 13th out of 159 counties in median income. And we're just out of the top 5, top 6.
There's your.
I bet that number's gone up since we've had a lot more people move into the county from outside.
This is based on 2023 numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the end of that information, unless you want me to go back to specific departments.
It's really a great document. We just looking at the whole thing is, but that information is great. Commissioner, anything else? Any other questions?
We use AI at all anymore. I mean, at all level. I know that's the biggest topic in my job. It's like the use of AI. It's the county. How do you all look at that?
So we utilize AI with cautions in place.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that we have done is that we have analyzed some of the documents that we have received to see if they're accurate. We've used AI for that. We have used AI to check and other information that we have received and be able to pull and create information sources. But one of the things that was emphasized, it's funny because when you go to ACCG,
I was wondering what ACCG
and you go to the training, you'll have folks that are saying, man, AI all this, AI all this. And then you go to the legal side and it says, don't use AI. And you got judges actually issuing orders because the citations that are being done are fabricated and made up, and they're not accurate. So I know that we have made use of Copilot and ChatGPT and other sources of AI, but we do it cautiously and we verify information.
You just got to be careful about it. It's amazing what it can do.
Absolutely.
It is actually replacing people's jobs.
Oh, 100%.
Yep.
But it's also making it easier to serve.
It is.
Last year's
To get
presentation.
laid off.
Last year's presentation with the ACCG, they actually had groups from, I think it was San Antonio, where they had kiosk box where you could go get your building permits with a bot rather than a person.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was that they had issues with permits issued in error. And then, so again, I think it's a great tool as long as it's used cautiously. Did I get all your questions?
Yeah, that's great.
David, share with us. You're laughing.
there's nothing else, I will thank Rob and Clint and staff and everybody that helps us put all that together, the county clerk. Whoever fills in one job to help somebody else do another job, I know that goes on up there, so. I thank y'all and all the department heads and office officers for getting with you and Clint to.
I
Get
will
this
say that
information.
Angela and Clint interact a lot
Mhm.
on financial matters. I do know that Heather also interacts with Clint on that accounts payable part and those kind of sources. And of course, Joanne will interact with anybody.
I think people understand how much the staff we need, depend on staff. Because we're all part-time at this, this is what you guys do, that's why we depend on y'all so much, and we appreciate all of you. Be sure to tell the staff, we appreciate it. And with that, Commissioner, don't have anything, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this workshop.
Motion to adjourn. Second, Commissioner Guy.
Commissioner Guy made the motion to adjourn, Commissioner Daniel made the second, any discussion? All in favor, show of hands, motion carries, no opposition.
All right.